Hey everybody, and welcome back to Popping Into Movies. I'm Jared.
And I'm Kate.
And this week, on a very special episode, we have a special guest, a consultant for In the Heights, also my father, Dan. Would you like to say hello?
Hello, everyone, and I'm excited to be here tonight. Thank you to Kate and to Jared.
Yes, we appreciate you being here. Since we started this a few months ago, you've always wanted to be on an episode, so I thought this was an appropriate episode. And also with Father's Day coming up, this is, I guess, a little bit of a Father's Day gift to have you on. Although we do appreciate it just as much.
Thank you.
And this week we watched the newly released Lin Manuel Miranda musical, In the Heights. And this is one that I've been pretty jazzed up about since last year when I really fell into a Hamilton hole when that got released on Disney Plus last year. I think I was in like the top 5% of Hamilton listeners last year.
And it still comes on the Spotify, like, suggestions.
Yeah, so when I heard this was coming out finally, and it's just going to be on HBO, you could just watch it, we were real jazzed up. And so I think this is a really exciting episode. We have a special guest. I'm really proud of the popcorn we came up with this week. So I'm really excited to talk about this. But first impressions, what did everyone think of the movie?
I loved it. I thought it was a great movie, and just overall, very good. Lots of music, and that sounds really general, but I liked it.
I have to agree with Kate. I mean, I may be one of the few on the planet who hasn't seen Hamilton, so I was very impressed with Lin Manuel's writing, and I think it was he didn't direct it, but I thought it was done beautifully. It was really, really, really well done.
Yeah, it was directed by the person who directed Crazy Rich Asians, right?
All like the Step Up movies, he did all those too.
Oh yeah, I think you could see that in the choreography if he did.
Fun fact, same choreographer for Step Up in this movie.
Well, it really shows in a lot of the scenes, I think. There's so much to digest in this movie. I think this is at least a 2 or 3 watcher. Because you got the crazy fast lyrics, Lin Manuel's known for. You got the choreography going on in the background. And there's so much little like Easter eggs and little stuff going on in the background. It's really hard. It's a lot to take in the first watch.
I kept thinking that too. Like, things were going really fast, and like I want to see it again, maybe to get absorbed more. I felt like almost I missed things that were really neat.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the first impression was really positive.
Yes, I agree. I mean, when you look at these sets, you really have to go back and review so you can see all the nuances. I mean, everything's so authentic and it's so beautifully done. It's just so exact to a T of what that life is like and what growing up in a city like Washington Heights would be, in a section like Washington Heights.
Yeah, and I think before we get into the movie, we usually like to talk about our background and if we've seen it before and I guess our connection to it. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. I grew up much like what I saw in the movie, and I don't want to get into any details and jump ahead here, and we'll discuss it as we go along. But it is city living and growing up as a youngster in a concrete jungle. It just encapsulates everything beautifully.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get your insight as we kind of talk through some of the set pieces that are in this movie. But before we get into talking about the movie, why don't we talk about the incredible popcorn we come up with this week? And I'll let Kate take over for that.
So this week, very inspired but not sponsored in any way, we have a Cafe Bustelo espresso popcorn. So this one I made kind of like a kettle corn, but I had added molasses this time because we don't have corn syrup. Again, this is a running theme. A lot of popcorn recipes call for corn syrup. We don't got it. So I used espresso and molasses to make this kind of kettle corn that is a very espresso-y flavor. So what did you think?
I mean, I thought it was incredible. Really nice kind of bitterness from the coffee, sweetness from the molasses. It was really solid. And I think part of it might be just a personal love for Cafe Bustelo. I think if this movie gets any message across, it's the prevalence of coffee in Latin culture, I think. Café con leche, café con, the condensed milk, it is an important staple. And I feel like this movie really, I'm glad it gets that across pretty well.
If I could change anything, I'd make it a little more coffee.
I think it's a nice mix of the molasses. I think I like that espresso bitter coffee flavor, so I would have liked a little more, but I really liked how it came out. And as always, this video will be posted on our TikTok and Instagram. You could always check out how we made it and some finished pictures. So with our delicious Cafe Bustelo popcorn in hand, why don't we go ahead and get into the movie, talk about the general plot, the songs we like. I think this movie is really dense. As much as it's a fun musical, I think there's a lot you can dig into. So I'm excited of what we're going to talk about.
I was wondering how they were gonna fill 2.5 hours worth of material, but I think this could have been like a 5-hour long movie and it still would have more to say.
You know, much like Hamilton, you see Hamilton, it's like 3 hours long and it's over in a snap of your fingers. And I think this movie is the same way. It's paced beautifully and it's a sad movie, right? Well, how would you describe this movie? I think it's kind of somber throughout the whole way through, but also hopeful, like this pride that comes across.
Yeah, it really revolves around identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Around identity and the characters trying to find themselves and trying to rekindle old memories and trying to start new memories in the future and what's to come. But it really does have 3 or 4 storylines, and it could have gone another 2.5 hours easily.
Yeah, and I think a big theme of this is that generational impression of a dream, right? Because you have the abuela, who even before her grandmother's dream coming from Cuba. You have Nina's father, who wanted to do that kind of American dream, entrepreneurship dream. You have Benny, right? And he wants to go to business school, right? You have all these people and so many different dreams and so many different ways to interpret it. It really is interesting how many kind of lenses you get a little dream idea comes across with so many characters.
It's because a common theme for everyone. Everyone has a little dream, and it's perfect that the movie starts out that way.
And so we kind of kick things off on a beach, which, I mean, spoiler alert, we're going to kind of reference things that happen later, but, you know, it is actually his little shop that is in Washington Heights that's revealed later. But I think it's more interesting to think about, you know, knowing that ahead of time.
I think that part of the play was something I was wondering the whole time, because that would be interesting if they just had a set piece. He was talking and you'd begin the play thinking that it was on a beach, that's your impression. But then later they just wheel in a counter and it's the same set piece, but it's just where he actually was.
You know what I think? I think it's in his eyes. That's what he sees. So he may still be in the shop in Washington Heights, but in his eyes, the portrait of the beach, that's his vision, that's his dream, and that's where he is, and we are seeing it through his eyes.
That's interesting, because I think with a lot of characters, you get a lot of fantasy sequences in this movie that kind of give you a glimpse into that dream world almost, right? You know, you have Vanessa when there's that scene where the fabric is falling from the buildings. You have Benny and Nina later in the movie dancing off the walls, right, with no gravity and crazy stuff, you know? This movie is, you know, has a lot of dreamlike sequences, even though it is grounded at the same time. You know, in that later scene, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself, when they're dancing on the side of the building, you have, you know, that kid at the dinner table that has his mouth open with them dancing in the window, right? So even though these are dreamlike sequences, they're also very real to the characters. And I really think it just balances you, right? You know, you could view this and think, wow, this is so dumb and over the top, what's going on? But I really think it ties into this dream theme really well. But getting way ahead of myself here, we start out with In the Heights. What did everyone think of the opening number?
I'm going to say, yeah, one of my favorite songs in the whole movie. It was really good. It just like introduced you to all the characters, what they're doing, and just a fun, lively song to kick us off. Yeah,
you know, that opening number really captured the experience. And what it does is and I appreciate Lin Manuel for bringing all these different dimensions of the Latino, right? Mm-hmm. The different shades, the different sizes, the different jobs. We see a Latino police officer.
Right,
we see Latinos doing civil work, doing professional work, doing all types of work. And it's so important to get that across that, you know, there's so much more than that stereotype that may be in the press at times.
It really immerses you, right, in Washington Heights, and that's what you want an opening song to do, and I think it accomplishes that really well. I really do enjoy all the product placement in the bodega. Very real feeling product placement. A lot of, you know, kind of, I think Latin household staples. The Cafe Bustelo is prominent in there with a whole bunch of other brands. Were there any that stuck out to you?
I would have to go with the Goya adobo, which is facing the wrong direction and always sees the back.
Yeah,
of the label.
I think Goya got a little bit of a cold shoulder in the post-production of this. Kind of thinking about the song, I really think it's interesting that Vanessa is the one that disrupts that song about halfway through. And I think out of all the characters, she is the one that is most resistant throughout the movie, living in the Heights. So I think it's interesting that she's the person to interrupt that in the middle of it, right? since she is the one that ends up, I think she's the only character that moves out by the end of it.
And I think it's interesting how of the two female leads, Vanessa is the one who wants to get out, but no one expects her to. Whereas Nina, everyone is pushing her and prompting her whole life to get out. And yet she's the one who is conflicted and wants to stay. I mean, they address that later on.
Yeah, I think Vanessa and Nina are extremely interesting to compare throughout this movie since they are very similar in their goals, but I think the way they go about it is very different. So I really do like the two of them.
So, Jared, in that opening number, something else that was interesting is how they paid homage to Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. That opening scene is almost identical to Rosie Perez dancing on that hot summer day in the opening of Do the Right Thing. It's almost done identically with a switch of characters, of course, and genders. But it was very cool to watch that because it was Do the Right Thing was such a big movie in my youth.
I mean, I'm kicking myself now. For years, you've been telling me to watch Do the Right Thing, so it would have been real helpful to have watched it now. But for anyone who hasn't seen it, I know it's about a heat wave as well, right? You know, the heat wave impending blackout is kind of the backdrop to In the Heights. So, well, that's a similar theme in Do the Right Thing, right?
Yes. It was a tumultuous summer there in maybe 85, 86, around that time when I was a teenager. And it had that same feel. It's a hot, sweltering summer, no ACs. There wasn't a blackout, but there was a lot of violence and a lot of madness in the street, which is the equivalent of a blackout, really. Yeah,
and as happy and joyous as the song sounded this, right? Throughout the movie, you get this countdown, right? 3 days till blackout, 2 days till blackout. There is this kind of looming threat and impending doom almost in this neighborhood. And it really is, it keeps the tension high, right? You kind of expect something bad to happen the whole time.
And just like as a point of reference, the play itself was written around 2005, I was reading. And I remember there was a huge blackout that summer of 2004, maybe 2005. We were in like 4th grade. And I'm wondering if that in part inspired some of this writing.
And if you remember that, and I do, Kate, I remember that clearly, it was in Manhattan who lost all of the power. It was the powerless Upper West Side. Anything below the Upper West Side kept the power. Midtown, downtown, Wall Street didn't lose the power. If they had to divvy up the electricity or the power, it all went below the Upper West Side.
Right. And I think it really is, it says a lot that this was written about 2004, 2005. And I am curious, right? Because I think the kind of dreamer plot line is a big part of this, which I think is a much more current issue. And I wonder what was the equivalent in the original, right? Because we have the Sonny character who is Usnavi's cousin, and he is, an undocumented dreamer. That's a big part of his character. So I wonder what was the equivalent in the original. I'd be curious to see that. So throughout this intro song, we get introduced to the whole cast of characters. We have Benny, who's Usnavi's best friend, who works at the taxi dispatch. Can you provide any insight on the taxi dispatch? I feel like it was going over my head exactly what that does.
Well, the taxi dispatch in a neighborhood like Washington Heights is really the only form of transportation. Most folks don't own vehicles, so they would call the taxi dispatch, or what they would call a gypsy cab. They will call gypsy cabs, and it's just the best way to get from point A to point B.
And anything that's not on the subway train, this was your only other option.
The quickest way, yes.
Yeah, and it literally becomes a lifeline, or it is a lifeline in the community, right? Which you see later in the movie during the blackout. So we get introduced to Nina, the daughter of the taxi cab company owner, and she's coming home from Stanford for the summer. And we kind of get her short song, kind of showing off that maybe it's not all it's cracked up to be, right? The school she's gone to. And we have her song, Breathe, Respira. Any thoughts on that one, on that song?
Yeah, I think it was great that she had this introspection and she's trying to find a way to speak to her dad about her decision, who's played by Jimmy Smits, who's probably the most, the most known actor, right? Or actress in the cast. Jimmy Smits?
Except maybe second to Lin Manuel. Is he?
Agreed, yes.
But Lin Manuel is more of a cameo in this movie.
I thought it was a great song. I wrote down Nina and Benny are the two of the best voices in the movie, in my opinion. So.
And I think what's interesting in Nina's song here in the beginning, when she's walking around, she turns around and there's a group of people just right behind her. And we kind of, I went to Kate and kind of laughed at it. Like, oh, look, it's just a group of people appeared, very musical. And then it happens again. And I think it's a little more than just musical magic, right? It's almost like she's feeling trapped and surrounded by these people, right? She can't escape her community, which we kind of find out is why she left Stamford later on.
Or it could be that she's carrying them, right? They're on her shoulders.
Yes.
I mean,
they're kind of always behind her.
She looks over her shoulder and it's her community.
Right. She feels that pressure that she has to represent them. But she's so pressured in that Stamford community. She feels like she can't be herself there.
And I really like that we got to see the glimpse of young Nina with that other younger actress playing her in some sort of a flashback, but in real time, which I kind of wish we could see for other characters in this movie. I was intrigued by like how they got to where they were more than they showed us, at least. Like Vanessa, at least. I wanted to know more about her past and other people.
Yeah, and I think the movie does a good job to make you feel invested, right? How many movies do you say, wow, I wish it was longer so I could find out more about those characters, right? Usually you're rolling your eye like, come on, let's go. But all these characters are so interesting and complex. I wish they all had their own song and background, which I think that says a lot about the movie. So right after her song, she goes out to dinner with her dad or lunch, and we find out that she dropped out to try to, protect his own finances, right? Extremely expensive school. The dad is selling off his business to pay for it. She doesn't want him to have to carry that burden.
She also experienced some really raw, unadulterated racism.
Yeah, no, so we get two stories about the racism at Stamford. Do you want to go over the first one that we get at the lunch?
Yes, well, she was at an event at a lunch, and I guess the deans were there, and there was a big group of students and staff. And a woman had approached her and mentioned something to her as if she was staff, right?
All the staff was Latino, so they just made this assumption that she also was. And it's interesting because, she tells us about two instances of racism at the school. And I almost feel like this happened first. And it's, these are older people, right? It's bad to say, right? You kind of expect it a little bit more versus later when it's her roommate, right? Her peer, right? You hope that someone from your own generation is going to look past that and not stereotype you in such a way. I think you could view at this point and say, you know what? You can't let those, that old generation keep you down. You got to keep going. And then we kind of get the second, the other shoe drops later on. So I like how they kind of reveal the real reason why she left the school by the end of it. And I almost feel like the dad would be a lot angrier.
I said that. Yeah. I feel like if she had dropped out, he was just like, oh, pat her on the head, like, you're being silly. But yeah, I feel like he'd be really way angrier and yelling if this was real life. But it's musical, so we don't get to see that.
And right after this lunch, Rosario, her father, calls Stamford to find out if it's really the deadline. And we get a nice little Hamilton Easter egg where the hold music is some Hamilton song. Did you recognize it right off the top?
Oh, yeah. They knew we were waiting for it. And I'm glad they put it in.
I think it was You'll Be Back or something like that. Also very appropriate for him getting her back into Stamford and, paying it off. So that concludes the first day. Then we get countdown to day 2 days until the blackout.
We get the salon song, and that's with Daniela, who owns the hair salon, Carla, and Cuca, which are three very interesting sort of these caricatures of women.
Yes.
In their dress. In
their own right, I think they have some depth by the end of it, right? You kind of expect them to be this annoying comic relief, but I really like them by the end of it.
Yeah, they added quite a bit, and it was funny in my notes. I'm reading how they stress how far the Bronx is because they're relocating.
Oh yeah,
there's gentrification going on. I'm sure you'd be discussing that, Jared. But they say the Bronx is so far they're moving to the Grand Concourse when it's only 3 subway stops. For those out there who might not know the geography of it all, it's 3 subway stops and it can't be more than 10 miles or a cab right away. And that salon song is great because it's all about bochinche, which is gossip. Mm-hmm. It's what are they? Tell me something I don't know, I believe is the title of it. So when Tell Me Something I Don't Know is all about the gossiping, is who's dating who and who's moved out, who's moving in, who's working here, who's dropped out of school. So it was it really did capture that.
Yeah, I think it really did. And I feel like I remember going to a salon or two like this. It really reignited some memory.
Yeah, there was like a little 10-year-old boy in the shop. So that's representation for you.
That is very accurate to some son getting dragged along to a salon.
I can attest to that. Jared sat there and watched as everyone got their hair blown out.
Yeah, very accurate. I also like the creepy moving wigs that were following her along with what was going on.
That was the sort of like surrealism that they showed in some of the songs, but like I wanted more of it.
Yeah, and some of them use like this augmented reality where like the things they're pantomiming would like, oh, I'm hitting a golf club, and then like there'd be this animated like golf club. Again, like the wigs moving, a lot of the surrealism that isn't really consistent throughout the movie, I don't think.
You know, so something that it brought me back to, and I kept reminiscing on different movies. It was sort of like in Greece with a beauty school dropout. That whole scene. Did you kind of feel that, the musical in the beauty salon?
Yeah, definitely. Especially just like the big hair part of it. It was very much that way. I was kind of hoping we would see more of like that big hair wig, like surrealism in all these other songs, but it wasn't every one. So it was kind of off-putting.
Yeah, but maybe that's just when the characters are maybe really excited or dreaming. That's kind of when it kicks in. Maybe that was kind of the purpose of it. Also, I've never seen Grease, so I had to nod out of this this reference. And I guess the plot point of this salon song is that everyone finds out that Nina dropped out of Stanford, and that's the hot gossip now in the neighborhood. So we get a short song with Vanessa, and you see that she's trying to apply to an apartment on the Upper East Side. And we get another glimpse into that racism that wants to keep people, you know, the Latino community in that neighborhood. And, you know, you don't want them in the Upper East Side. You want to keep them in Washington Heights, where the real estate agent takes a look at her and is like, what is it? You need a cosigner, and she doesn't have a credit. And the cosigner needs to show 40 times the rent.
Which is insane in like the New York market, that like no one's going to have that. Nobody.
Yeah, so you get the impression that she's not asking every tenant for 40 times rent. So we get kind of a depressed Vanessa going back to the bodega. Does the bodega have a name before the ending? Is it just called the bodega?
It's the corner bodega.
store?
Yes, the corner bodega.
Okay. So we got her sad. She's I think you referenced this when she opens up and grabs a Coke and is just chilling out in front of the freezer.
Yeah, that's the AC in the hood, right? when you're walking off the sweltering street, you go into the bodega or into the supermarket and open up that freezer and stick your head in for 30 seconds.
I was half worried that Usnavi was going to go to her and tell her to close the door. You know, she's going to burn out the cooler again.
Exactly.
That's how the milk fridge went.
Yeah, right. He's fixing it later. I thought. Yeah, I thought, is that, I mean, I'm guessing if you stress it out and keep it open, that's going to break it, right? Is that breaking from people just chilling out too long in front of the freezer door? So Sunny helps Usnavi get a date finally. And another interesting contrast moment where you have Usnavi celebrating that he's getting this date, and Vanessa is still really reeling from her disappointment from the apartment.
I just wanted to mention that whenever Usnavi is celebrating something, he almost has a catchphrase. He always says, "Let's go," which is kind of outdated, maybe a little. Like, I feel like people don't say that anymore.
He's an excited man. You can't, what are you going to do?
And he's known her since grade school or high school, and he's been pining, and he finally, is going to go on a date.
Yeah. And this is where we get one of those quick dream-like sequences where Vanessa's cutting hair, and I think it zooms out or zooms into her eye, and you see her in this empty cityscape with flowing cloth from from buildings. So just one of those examples of dream sequences that you get throughout this whole movie. And now we get to what might be top 3 song for me, the 96,000 song, where you find out that someone at the bodega bought a lottery ticket, and while they're all going to the pool, you kind of get this long song and dance of what would they do if they won the lottery.
Someone there won at the bodega. They didn't just buy it.
I love this song. What did you guys think of it?
I thought the song was great, and I think it's great because it's not 96 million. It's 96,000, but the choreography and the dancing in the pool, around the pool, into the pool, it sounds like somebody just won like the Mega Million for $960 million, but it's 96,000, and they're all singing about what they would buy and what they would do, and it just goes to show you don't, money won't buy happiness, and to certain people in life, they don't need 96 million to be happy. 96,000 would have made them extremely happy.
And I think this is something that anyone can relate with. I think everyone has had that sequence where they fantasize, what if I won this lump of money? What would I do? And I think this is maybe one of the most important songs in the whole movie, because Usnavi kind of hits the nail on the head later, where it wasn't about the money, right? It was about that everyone had a dream. Everyone had their chance to voice. And I think that was a really important insight to get into everyone's character.
I agree. And I'll be the first one in line to say that I think the lottery should be split up more. I don't think one person needs to win $500 million, but 5 people's lives could be changed with $100 million for sure. That's my take on it. And I really like the choreography and the what's it called? The balance in the choreography in these scenes. It was very cool. All of the old school like pool dancing, what do they call that when you dance in the pool?
Synchronized.
Yeah, synchronized swimming. That was very neat. You don't see that very often. And I also wrote that this seemed a little undersaturated. Like in musicals, I'm used to seeing very vibrant, bright colors, and I feel like this whole movie was undersaturated, or at least not warmed in tone, which I feel like it should have been. It was very hot. It was summer. It should have been a little warmer. It seemed a little cool colored.
Yeah, but in contrast, I kind of like the more realistic view you have, right? It makes you feel a little more like you're on the street.
No, I want to have fun. I want cool, pretty colors.
You can go watch Grease for that then.
One scene that I really thought was funny was Lin Manuel, who plays the piraguero, and he has the piragua stand, and that's just the standard in the neighborhood. Is these a piragua is an icy and with a flavor, and he gets into sort of a battle with the Mr. Softy guy.
Yeah,
and the Mr. Softy guy is like trying to butt him out of the business and get into the neighborhood, and Lin Manuel tells him, "This is my neighborhood," and it's just another example of that gentrification, right?
Right.
The long-standing piragua guy is getting pushed out by the big corporate Mr. Softy guy.
I'm really surprised Mr. Softy let themselves be used in this movie and portrayed as the corporate villain, honestly. Really surprising to see. It's a short song, the Piragua song, but the keep scraping by, I think, is a really cute play on words, right? He's shaving the ice and he's getting, scraping by with his little cart. And it's short, but it was a nice little song. So this moves us forward into the one day till blackout day. And we kind of get some more development into Benny and Nina's relationship, where they get a song and dance number together, the When You're Home, where they kind of reflect on their childhood growing up. What does it mean to be connected to your neighborhood? And I think this had my favorite choreography. There's a lot of breakdancing. You get some old people dancing in the park. It has a lot of cute moments. I really like this song.
And it really captures the feeling of the neighborhood with the fire hydrants and hopscotch and the gentleman playing dominoes, right? And she keeps referring to the sounds of the old block.
Right. Let me hear my street, right?
Yeah. She yearns for that, right? She yearns for hearing the sounds of the old block. She's been in California, and now she's back. She's back where she feels she belongs.
It made me feel nostalgic for some place I've never been.
I mean, do you still feel that way, right? Growing up in the Bronx, do you ever yearn for that and think about those?
Yes.
Summer days?
Because my youth consisted of a fire hydrant, and I was telling Kate how we did it. We'd take the lids off of both sides of the can, and then that would be like the fire hose, right? We would put the can in front of the hydrant, and then we'd shoot people with the water. So it definitely brings me back.
That's even something I think Benny mentions, right? And he would take it off, and when he heard sirens, he'd run away.
Yeah, we'd all run after we get we'd let someone come by with their windows rolled down and then just shoot water in their car and run. And they can't chase us.
And that, oh man, I mean, that's that, you can't recreate that outside of a urban city, close-knit environment. It's really just a one-in-a-kind experience. And I'm glad it portrayed that, I think, how it realistically is, which I think is really good. Moving on from that, we get, honestly, the best shot in the movie, a montage of delicious Hispanic food. And I won't bore you all to list them all, but what was the best looking thing? The flan, maybe?
Yeah, the flan. Everything was food porn. It looked so good.
Yeah, did they have like a penny there? Not a whole pig. They had a part of a penny.
Yeah, like a roast
pig.
Yep. Pork roast.
It all felt very authentic, right? It felt like you could smell that scene of the movie.
And it was definitely done authentically when you have all these people in the apartment, and
Yeah.
everyone's coordinated. No one's bumping into one another. Music comes on, and that's what it's all about in our culture. Regardless of no AC, regardless of 103 degrees, regardless of a incoming blackout, which you will see, in the near future here, there's still joy, and there's still a reason to just celebrate life.
We might have buried the lead there before. I don't think we've mentioned that, I'm Puerto Rican, and my father is Puerto Rican. So I think that's a lot of the connection from this movie is coming from that upbringing and culture. So
and the movie definitely, it's in Washington Heights, was primarily a Dominican population, but it incorporates all of the different Hispanic backgrounds and countries. So it does that.
I really like how it didn't feel like it was, playing a favorite to one specific background. It really made it feel like a united front, which I think is an important thing to show, which I'm glad it did a good job doing that. We get the family dinner. We get a very sweet moment where they're all dancing and playing the music. What is the scraping instrument called?
So that is the guiro. That's called the guiro. And they also have maracas that they're playing. And someone's playing Congo, they're playing Congo on a piece of furniture, or they didn't have the Congos, but that's part of that's all part of it.
Yes, and that's straight out of parties we've had.
Yes,
it really felt so authentic. It was very nice to see. And the mood at this party gets brought down. Benny rushes in and confronts Rosario, and you find out that he is selling the second half of the business to pay for Nina's education. And that's where the other shoe drops, and she tells everyone the real reason why she decided to move out.
Yeah, at this moment, we also find out that one of Nina's reasons for leaving school, beyond what had happened to her at that dinner, was something she had experienced with some roommates, where there were some missing pearls, and no one was going to be, allowed to leave the room. They searched her bags. They questioned her repeatedly. Just to find out that the young lady had the pearls the entire time. And, I can attest to this in a quick personal story. When I first started at my job at the first company, I had a roommate. We would have roommates when we were traveling. I believe we were in Texas. And my roommate, who I really hadn't known too long, I just met him the week before. His watch was missing, and no one can leave the room. And people have questioning me consistently. He had it in his bag the entire time.
Wow.
So I can really relate to that story and how I felt a certain kind of way. And I was a lot younger, and I wasn't as evolved with just getting past the ignorance of people. So I can really relate to that. And it's a tough situation. Yeah. It's really tough.
Yeah. And then, she kind of goes on and beyond just that confrontation, that feeling like she let them down in that moment, right? She apologized even though she did nothing wrong, right? Carrying that shame for nothing that she did. And it's hard to confront yourself that, you feel too weak, that you didn't stand up for yourself. That's the reason she chose to leave school. And I think in that moment, she 100% was certain with her decision, right? She looks her dad in the eye and tells him, I'm leaving. And it's a really intense moment. And right after the scene, we get to the blackout. And I feel like this next 30 minutes or so is really the climax, where really you feel like the heat is building up, literally, and everything is coming to a head. And this is really what starts to snowball all of it. And before we move into the club scene, I think we need to take a step back and talk about a character I think we've omitted throughout this whole thing, unfortunately.
Yeah, we kind of glossed over Abuela Claudia, who is the Cuban matriarch of the entire neighborhood. She never had kids of her own, so she treats everyone like family and vice versa. And so she's, in the beginning, gives Nina these handkerchiefs or napkins?
They're like hand embroidered napkins.
That Nina's mother, I believe, had hand embroidered. And she was taking them to the dry cleaners to be cleaned. The new dry cleaner in town, who was not Latino and bought out Rosario's. And there was rumors going around that they were overcharging people, and he charged her, what was that?
$117.59.
That much to clean those napkins. So she politely left.
Yeah, and that's kind of the hard evidence and proof we see of that gentrification coming in and destroying these neighborhoods where the existing community just can't keep up with the cost.
And on that character, the abuela character is so true to life. You know, my grandmother, my abuela, who was my blood grandmother, she would cook for anyone I brought home. She would cook and care for, and that's the structure of the family.
Yeah.
There's always that matriarch, and there's that lead, that alpha female, and she will take care of any of the puppies that come by.
Yep. And that's really the character. You know, I think the abuela character Claudia in this really embodies that figure, which is very nice. So, and she does host that dinner, right? She is cooking all that delicious food montage that we get before. So right after that dinner, we get this scene in the club where Vanessa is finally going on the date with Usnavi, which he kind of screws up, and she's off dancing with another guy. Benny is drinking. You know, everyone's kind of feeling down after this dinner and the business getting sold.
Yeah, she's really looking for him to protect her, right? She's looking for him. When he doesn't come out to the floor right away, she's not happy. When he goes to get her a shot and a drink, she's not happy.
Yeah, he's being a little shy, and she's out there on the dance floor. And that's when the power goes out and they totally lose each other.
And when those lights go out, I think we get maybe one of the heaviest lines in the whole movie. That
they're powerless.
Yep.
And not just powerless with the power for the lights, and not just powerless with economic power, not just powerless against racism, but it's just such a recurring theme through the entire, film.
Right. Every character in their own way feels powerless, right? Financial, immigration status.
Yeah.
You know, in almost any facet, you can apply that powerless status to the characters in the movie. It's genius. I think the blackout is a real reality of living in a city and a stressed power grid. But there's also a weird hope. I think with every, downturn in this movie, you have an opposite upturn, right? Where they pull out the fireworks and there's this beautiful lighting with the fireworks and the sparklers and people are dancing. It's a real roller coaster with every, the good and the bad swings in this movie. And I love the firework lighting throughout this whole thing and the blackout song.
Jared, during that blackout and Kate, we see Benny run back to the taxi dispatch.
Yes.
Right? Because again, that taxi dispatch is essential, and they're calling taxis out to pick up folks that need to go to the hospital. I know there's one call that comes through for a woman who's in labor who had to be rushed to Columbia Presbyterian, just like Jared's mom who had to be rushed.
Would you like to say where I was born?
Jared was born in Washington Heights, ironically enough. He's a Heights baby. So
it's just the connection I feel to this movie. It's not coincidental.
All comes full circle. And Nina tells Benny there, let go of the business, which was interesting. Let go. She tells him, let go of the business. And, she can't let go of the Heights.
Yes.
She can't let go of the sound of the Heights, the smell of the Heights, because it's in her blood.
While that's going on, we also get Vanessa and Usnavi breaking up. I mean, they were never really together, but having a bit of an argument and splitting up there. People all start to trickle in at the after party at Abuela's house, and we get a really sweet scene with all the salon girls. Sunny trickles in, Usnavi's there, right? Everyone starts to join in, and they're lighting candles. They're breaking out the bingo. It's, even in this dark time, they're finding a way to find the joy in it, which I thought was really sweet.
Yeah, community unites during those times.
And from there, we get what I think is one of the best songs in the movie, which is Abuela Claudia's Swan Song, in which I think it paints the best picture of her journey to America and the conflicts that she had feeling between reminiscing about her childhood in Cuba versus coming to America for a better life for herself and her mother, which is kind of mirroring Usnavi's lamenting for his childhood.
Yeah, we again have another identity crisis, right? Because remember, she had agreed to go with Usnavi at this point to go to the Dominican Republic, right? That's what they're leading us to believe. So she has this identity crisis, and her mom's asking her to walk into the light, right, Jared?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'd go as far as say this is maybe my favorite song. I think it might be the most powerful song in the whole movie, because you have this woman whose mother accomplished her dream, right? She moved to New York, right? She did this hard house cleaning, maid labor, right? They mentioned the chemicals cracked her hands, so she had to wear the velvet gloves. She worked so hard for this dream, and her daughter recognizes that. But her daughter, the abuela, also recognizes that, well, what does she leave behind? What does she leave behind in Cuba? It's really heartbreaking. People want to immigrate to the U.S., but on one hand, you see the opportunity and the opportunity for growth, but on the other hand, you're leaving behind your home, your heritage, and culture. And it's really heartbreaking to see this abuela, older lady character, right? She's seeing the young people in Washington Heights go through this again, right? The same conflict her mother most likely goes through. And it's kind of really heartbreaking how generational and cyclical it all is.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many underlying, and they're not so underlying the tones, right?
Yeah. From
the DACA students to the references of the different immigrants. It's really not so subtle.
Yeah, and this abuela song takes place in a subway, and when she's on the subway portion that's going to, implied to go to New York, it's in her face and like very aggressive when she's in New York. Just really the duality of being torn between your home and your immigration home is really interesting. Cool lighting and the doubles and the special effects in this abuela song is really cool. Kind of a passage into the afterlife, because she does pass away at the end of the song. So after the abuela passes away, everyone is pretty heartbroken with this, and we get a very sweet kind of requiem for her, the alabanza song, which means praise, right? Praise to God.
Praise, yes.
Paying their respects and praising the abuela, the matriarch of the whole neighborhood who has passed away.
And we get another coming together with light in this sequence where everyone has their memorial candles they're holding up together, lighting the path for each other in the blackout, coming together, just like with the fireworks.
Nice lighting with the kind of candles that they're all holding is very beautiful. I really like this. The sense of community and how many shots you get of people coming together in this really does tie it all together quite nicely. But after that day, we get 3 days still blackout, right? So this next day is in that blackout period. And as they're going through Abuela's old things, we get a business card, right, for an Irish business that Rosario is the person who bought that out and started the cab business. So I think I just mentioned this, but that cyclical nature of people moving in, moving out, I think it's an interesting perspective to have on it.
Yeah, I mean, in the light of build the wall and keep the immigrants out, that's all that's built this country.
Right.
When the Irish and the Italian came in the early 1900s and in the late 1800s, who were the next wave? You know, the Chinese and the Puerto Ricans that came, including my grandmother who came in the 1940s and moved to Spanish Harlem. It's all cyclical. And now we have the next wave, you know, whoever the Salvadorians, Mexican, Costa Rica, you know, whoever it may be. But everyone just moves on, moves up, and the next wave come.
I think I'm really glad they took a moment to recognize kind of what it was before being this Latino community, what came before it. I think it shows a level of self-awareness that the movie has. You know, they're recognizing that past, which I really enjoy. I like it. You know, by the end, some people have moved on, but, you know, we have Usnavi that is staying there and it's going to keep that culture alive, even though people around it might change. I think there's a path forward where you can kind of have both, I hope. We cut away from that DACA rally, kind of a immigrant rights, citizenship
some
rally.
sort of political event, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Where they're...
For Dreamers. And we find out that Sonny is undocumented. And he finds out that he can't go to college without documentation.
And a light bulb just went off in my head. When they're talking to Sonny's father, who is a little cameo from Mark Anthony that we get, he says, "How do you pay, my son?" And he says, "In cash." And he's like, "You ever wonder why that is?" And now I'm realizing that's because he's undocumented, not because he's a child working without papers, but
no
he
social
literally...
security number there.
Exactly.
I'm ashamed that that light bulb didn't click for me until just now either. Because I think you're right. It could be implied that he's underage, just working under the table, but it does have that second, more significant meaning to him. And this is where Nina finds her kind of call to action here, where she hears the folks chanting in the background tell her story. And right after she has that realization, she runs back to Rosario, her father, and kind of doubles down on, I'm going to go do this, but I'm going to come back. Right, she's going to go get this education, but use it to benefit her own community. And I wrote down here, I think this might be one of my favorite quotes in the movie. this is when it happens. You can see a future that I can't see. That really sums up that generational story for me.
I love that. I love that line too. I love that because you always want your children to move onward and upward, right? My parents wanted it for me. I wanted it for Jared and his sister, and Kate can say the same for her parents. It's what parents want. It's what we dream of.
Yep, and I think it's true for any parent, but especially for ones who, Rosario fought tooth and nail for this cab business that he brought and had a life, and to see his daughter want to carry on that torch and do even more, I think it's really powerful. It really is a huge message of the whole story.
And how Rosario kind of brought it back to when he was younger, his father envisioned a future just like him, working on a farm, but he could envision a brighter future with an education. That's why he made sure his daughter got it. So now he's realizing that Nina's vision is something he can't see as well.
Yeah, I think he mentions that he didn't even go to high school, right?
Yep.
He didn't even have a high school diploma.
Right, finding him, he finds himself in the position his father was in, like you mentioned, not being able to see that path forward. Now he can kind of rest easily knowing that his daughter has found her purpose. And really, this whole blackout period is really sad and depressing. There's no sound in the streets. There's not a lot of music that goes on. The salon is moving away. You see him packed up, and you see Daniela yell out, "Goodbye, everyone. I'm leaving." And there's no one there. There's like two guys on the stoop or something. Because throughout the 2 hours or so before this, everyone's dancing, everyone's in the streets singing, doing stuff, and it's just dead quiet. And I keep saying this for all of them, this might be my favorite song, the Carnival de Barrio. So
let's put a little pretext on that, right? How does it lead to this? Do you guys remember?
No, go ahead.
When the three three beauty salon characters, right? Give me their names, Kate. You know them. Cuca,
Daniela,
right? Mm-hmm. Carla and Daniela, and they're saying, what's going on here? They're ready to say goodbye, and there's these two old men are in front of the building, and they're insulted, right? Because everyone's mourning, everyone's down in the dumps because of the blackout, and Abuela had died, and she says, we're more than this, right? We have more life than this, and it leads us into that carnaval.
Yes, and it's a celebration. The slow build-up, this is a long song, but the slow build-up where she really has to rally everyone, get people excited, it is just a beautiful thing to see.
It is very fun with everyone showing off their culture's flags, a little moment for everybody there. And another scene where I kind of wished it was oversaturated a little more, some more colors, because it was so fun and lively, but I still loved it. I agree. Probably my favorite song.
Yeah, we had mentioned this before, but having kind of equal representation for all the kind of Hispanic factions, right? You get the Dominicans, you have the Puerto Ricans, you have the Mexicans. You kind of have everyone raising their flag and waving it around. And it's really it's a really fun song.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's so many petty arguments and pettiness amongst the different countries and the different ethnicities, I guess. And we have so much more in common than we have than differences. And that number just encapsulates it beautifully.
Right. You can get caught up in those kind of tribal politics, silly things, but this really unifying song kind of looks past that. Also, I know it's representing all of them, but Lin Manuel is holding a Puerto Rican flag. So, really that means we know which is the best one there.
Well, yeah. I mean,
he's representing.
And Kate, with the actors, I was telling Kate, the actors and actresses, ironically, no one plays their country. No one represents their country. So if you run down the cast of characters here, Navi, who is a Puerto Rican, plays a Dominican.
Right. In real life, he's Puerto Rican, and Vanessa, his love interest, she is Puerto Rican, but in real life, the actress is Mexican.
Yes.
Who else? Nina,
who is Dominican, playing a Puerto Rican character.
Yeah, and I think it's real nice interchangeability to show that, we're not all that different.
Except Lin Manuel, who gets to play Puerto Rican, is a Puerto Rican. He cannot change.
He wrote himself in.
He's true to life, though. He's a proud Puerto Rican.
He's a proud what is it? What is the person who sells piragua?
Oh, piraguero.
Yes.
I know, Jared.
It doesn't roll off quite as easily. But all in all, this Carnival song is awesome and really brings us into the kind of end of it all. Usnavi comes in, tells everyone he's moving to the Dominican. Also brought down a little bit with Vanessa and Sunny, who kind of remind everyone, why are we doing this, right? All these rich folks are going to move into the neighborhood. We're going to lose it all. But Usnavi's counterpoint is, so what? We have to move on. You can't just wallow here. And
he wants to go back to where he thinks his best days were.
Yeah. I really appreciate kind of how sad the songs are willing to be in this. There's a reality to this situation that you can't ignore, right? You can't just musical number it away. And I like that they're all very balanced with how they tell the story. And as happy and reinvigorating as this song is, I like that it's still grounded in the situation.
As well, and sitting in the audience, it's also fun because you're on this roller coaster ride, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're emotionally taken down into a valley, and then we come up to these peaks with these beautiful numbers.
And Usnavi hits a big peak because as he's moving out of the neighborhood, he's rummaging through some of Abuela Claudia's things, and he finds that missing winning lottery ticket for $96,000.
Yeah, $96,000. How long are lottery tickets good for after they're sold? Because it's been 30 days since it was sold.
A year. You got a year.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I thought Mega Millions get rolled into the next one.
No, but it's a year. You have a year to come forward.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad he got it in 30 days then.
They know if one has been sold. So if one wasn't sold, then they'll roll it.
Okay. So they hold it if someone has one and just wait for them to come forward. Oh, okay. I gotcha. Not a big lottery ticket guy. So
only scratch off.
Yeah, only scratch off. And then I think maybe right before this, we get Nina and Benny's final number together, which is the most dreamlike sequence where they're dancing on the side of the building, when the sun goes down, where they're kind of reminiscing on the summer they spent together. And who knows if they're going to stay together in the future, but at least they have the summer they spent together. I don't have too much to say about it. It's just a kind of a nice closing number before Nina gets on her train to go back to California.
Yeah, it's the special effects are interesting. It's like the dancing on the ceiling video from Lionel Richie a very long time ago, where they did the same special effects. But she goes back to wanting to go on the fire escape, and she wants to see, right?
The sunset and the smells.
Yeah, she wants to feel that once again.
Yeah, I think it's a really nice closing out for Benny and Nina. I liked it. And really that kind of brings us to the end here. Vanessa, Usnavi kind of reconcile a little bit on the morning that he's about to leave to but go set up this shop in the Dominican Republic that from the beginning we're led to believe he does do. But he makes one last kind of walk through the streets, through the heights, and he finds Vanessa and goes into the bodega and finds her like art studio type thing. Oh, we didn't mention the spray paint artist, Pete, who's kind of in the background. He gets his moment here where Vanessa uses his, spray paint rags as inspiration for the art. No character is wasted in this. Everyone really gets a little payoff moment, which I'm glad. It's some nice tight writing in it.
And so we get a nice conclusion to that winning lottery ticket as he goes to his lawyer friend and uses it to pay for the legal fees for Sonny's citizenship
documentation. Yeah.
And it also goes to show you that even though he's won enough money to accomplish any dream that he could think of, he realizes that home for him is still Washington Heights, and he wants to be there with his people instead of what he thought was his dream in the Dominican. His
mantra throughout the movie is he looks at the Dominican pictures from the DR. My best days were then, right? And at the end of the movie, he has, he completes his arc there, and my best days are right now in the Heights.
Ahead of me too, right?
Ahead of me.
Yeah.
And
it's beautiful.
He transforms the store into the beachfront that we see it, that we're led to believe was on an island.
And also this whole time he is telling this story to his daughter and the other local neighborhood kids. And the movie closes in on her like winking at the camera, which is just another cute little next generation wink. Like the cycle continues. Good things will continue to happen.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure we do see his daughter. She's like in the background and on the streets of some of these. There's one scene in particular where song with Benny and Nina, when they're going through the neighborhood, there's like a little girl running up the steps and Nina chases after her. And I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be the daughter.
No, that's young Nina. we've seen young Nina in other music scenes that Nina sings about her growing up. So that's young Nina.
Oh, okay. That makes way more sense than Usnavi's daughter being in the scene. Because it is specifically during the Nina scenes, now that I think about it. Because when she's singing her first song at the beginning, that's also where you see the little girl.
What's this little girl doing here?
I stand corrected. And that brings us to the end of In the Heights. But I think when we were kind of talking over this, we might have had some few loose ends we want to talk about. So what else are you guys thinking about?
I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Usnavi, the origin of his name.
Yes.
Which is hilarious because I've heard this and we've seen this in the past and from personal experience. But Jared, Kate, you want to explain Usnavi's origin?
Yeah, his
Usnavi,
dad coming from DR, looking across the boat and seeing this U.S. Navy ship and just smashing it together into one word.
Yeah. And my cousin who's a midwife in Washington Heights at Columbia Presbyterian had a woman in labor who happened to be a Dominican woman, and when they bring the paperwork after the baby's born, she thought the baby's name was Femali and it was a female. So it's not that original that it was Navi when you have a Femali running around. So that's true to life right there.
Yeah, just that unfamiliarity with the language and just reading it how you would say it.
And just at one point on the community, on the sense of community and how I had written down how during the blackout, the community united. Last year when there were riots, during the riots, the George Floyd riot, the community banded. No one looted in Washington Heights.
Yeah.
And that wasn't in the news because they all came down and protected their storefronts. And the community is strong, and they may not have a lot of money and they may not have a lot of possessions, but they have one another, and that's been lost, right? That's been lost in the last few years, that sense of community.
Yeah, and I think during one of the last songs, he mentions that, right? Like one day it's going to be rich people and hipsters, and right, they just don't have that sense of community, right? It's very much every man for himself. It ends hopeful with Usnavi staying, but there's still this looming threat of everyone being pushed out. But, you have to be as hopeful as you can be. So I think I'd be remiss if we didn't do a quick, what is our favorite song or two from this whole thing? Would you like to start off?
Yeah, absolutely. I enjoyed, again, the pool. I thought the pool scene was phenomenal. I just love the dancing, and I wish I had that. People had that reaction to me when I went to the pool, to the community pool in the projects once upon a time, but it didn't happen for me. So I like watching it. And the Carnaval is also great. The battle of the countries, but they're all united in the flags and everyone was represented. I thought that was.
I totally agree. Two of my top 3 favorite songs, and I think they're just the most fun and the biggest numbers, and so they're just really fun to watch, and I can see myself listening to them again later and singing them around the house. There's my third favorite would probably be Abuela Claudia's swan song. Very sad, but I just thought it was amazing and emotional and perfect.
Yeah, I'm with you. Abuela's song is probably my favorite. And then my second favorite has to be the Carnival. It's a real fun number. And of all of them that I think I'd go onto YouTube and I'm going to rewatch this number, I think that'll probably be it. I liked it a lot. So I'm sad to say, I think that brings us to the end of our In the Heights episode. I think it was an incredible musical, incredible movie. Highly suggest you go watch it and listen to the soundtrack. And I'd like to thank our very special guest, my father, for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us and giving us all your insight, personal knowledge.
Well, I appreciate it. And more importantly, I'm thankful that the both of you let me into this world, because I listened to the Pee Wee Herman episode and I listened to quite a few, and I'm yelling at the phone or where I'm listening, please mention the Pee Wee Herman song, guys. But I wasn't here to remind you. But thank you for letting me.
We're gonna have to have you on as a more special guest every now and then.
If anyone wants them to review a movie, put it out there. Put it on the comments.
Yes, we're always ready for recommendations. And if you want to leave my dad a Happy Father's Day voice message, please feel free to voice in. Well, I'll wish you a happy early Father's Day while we're on here, and thank you again for joining us and giving some context to this, to the movie, and validating its accuracy. I think it adds a lot to the movie to have that input.
Yes, the expert knowledge on this.
Would you like to say lead us out and say goodbye?
Well, listen, we want everyone, like Jared had said, for the fathers out there, the fathers in all your lives, happy Father's Day, and be safe. And watching The Heights. Definitely recommend it.
Thank you. All right, everyone. We'll see you on the next episode.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to Popping Into Movies.
To view recipes and pictures of all the popcorns we've made, you can find us on Instagram at Popping Into Movies.
If you want to send us feedback on what you thought about this episode or have a suggestion for a future episode, you can reach us directly at poppingintomovies@gmail.com or on Twitter @poppingmovies.
You can also leave us a message on Anchor through the link in the episode description. It might just show up in a future episode.
Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.